Welcome to part 4. The first thing we need to discuss is cusps. A cusp, in this case, is going to be, for example, if we have Aries and Taurus, where they meet, the line where they meet is the cusp. Taurus and Gemini, where they meet, where it crosses from one side to the other, that's a cusp. Same with Gemini and Cancer, all the way around to Pisces and Aries again. So Pisces and Aries, the line in the middle, that's the cusp. Now, with a cusp, that if you have a planet that is near that point, it will actually, or on that point, on the cusp, it will actually take on the energy of both signs. And what I mean by that is, let's say you have a Taurus sun, and let's say it's only 1 or 2 degrees from Aries. Let's say it's 1 or 2 degrees Taurus. Then it is automatically going to get some of that Aries energy mixed in with it. It's still going to be a Taurus sun. It's still going to be primarily Taurus, but it will have Aries energy mixed in with it, and it will take on the characteristics of both. Let's look at the moon. The moon right here is 26 degrees Sagittarius. Now, with 26 degrees Sagittarius, you're going to get a little bit of a Capricorn influence. It's still going to be primarily Sagittarius, but a little bit of a Capricorn influence. If you go to Mercury, looks like about 25 degrees Gemini. With 25 degrees Gemini, you may get a little bit of a Cancer influence, you may not. The average will probably be, if it's within 4 to 5 degrees of another sign, then it's probably going to get influence from the other sign. It's going to be a cusp placement or a cusp energy. It'll be a mixture. Now that can vary depending on who you ask, but that's probably, to start with, that's probably a good thing just to assume 4 to 5 degrees, I would say. Now, as far as the cusp energy on all the planets, well, some people only pay attention to the cusp energies when it involves the sun. And let's say the moon is even closer to Capricorn here instead of Sagittarius. Let's say it's like 29 degrees Sagittarius. Then you're thinking like, okay, it's probably going to have a lot of Capricorn. Well, some people don't pay attention to that and they just simply call it Sagittarius, and that's it. The sun, they'll pay attention to it, but nothing else. Where they pay attention to the cusp energies. But I tend to pay attention to the cusp energies, the cusp placements for all the planets, including the sun. So, that's what a cusp is. And that's what happens when a planet is on or near the cusp. It takes on the energy from both signs. Next, it's time to talk about the houses. There are 12 houses. They're divided up just like the signs. Each house corresponds to a sign of the zodiac. First house to Aries, second house to Taurus, third house to Gemini, fourth house to Cancer, all the way around 12th house to Pisces. And like the signs being divided into cardinal, fixed, and mutable, the houses are divided up into angular, succedent, and cadent. So just like we had cardinal, fixed, mutable, the houses will be angular, succedent, cadent, all the way around. And right here, I wrote angular in red, just like I wrote cardinal in red. The red lines are the cusp, or in this case, the beginning of the houses. So, and the signs, the way I have them drawn. So, first house cusp is the ascendant. Second house cusp is here. Third house cusp here. Fourth house cusp, the IC. Seventh house cusp, the descendant. And 10th house cusp, the MC or midheaven. So, what is the first house? The first house, in simple terms, just like the ascendant, it's going to be outward image, the way others first perceive you. And if we are to assume that the sign of Cancer is here, forget that saying Aries or Pisces there. Pretend that the sign of Cancer is here. The ascendant is in Cancer. The first house cusp is in Cancer. Then the first house will be with a Cancer energy. The emotional and intuitive, with initiative and enthusiasm. So, first house, just like the definition I gave for the ascendant. The ascendant, the first house is the first house cusp, outward image, and the way others first perceive you. Second house, money and what we value. Third house, lower learning, short distance travels. Fourth house, home life. Fifth house, fun and pleasure individually, as an individual. Sixth house, self-development, self-improvement. Seventh house, partnerships, the way you interact with others. Eighth house, death and transformation. Ninth house, higher learning, long distance travels. 10th house, career and public life. 11th house, friends and how you have fun in a group. 12th house, confusion and confinement. So, we went over the ascendant in the first house. So, let's go to the sun. Now, the sun is, let's use the signs in the middle, and let's pretend for a moment that the signs and the houses are perfectly lined up, which most of the time they won't be. But for the moment, let's pretend they are lined up. So the sun is in Taurus and the second house. The sun, we know, is ego, core self, general characteristics. That being in Taurus will mean a practical and realistic and resistant to change type of energy. But it will be active in the area of your life as the area of your life, money, and what you value. That area of your life is where that sun, Taurian sun energy, will be active and most apparent. Let's go to the moon. Emotions, intuition, inner self. That being in Sagittarius, mutable fire, will have enthusiasm and spontaneous, and adaptable and flexible. In the area of life of higher learning and long distance travels. That's where it will be the most prominent and most apparent. Next, let's look at Mercury. Mercury retrograde. In Gemini. So, Mercury, intellect and communication. In Gemini, which is communicative and intellectual, and adaptable and flexible. And notice how with Mercury, intellect and communication, and in an air sign, communicative and intellectual, it rules there. Mercury rules in Gemini. It's a strong placement for Mercury. So anyway, intellect and communication with a communicative and intellectual, adaptable and flexible energy in the third house, or the house of lower learning and short distance travels. That is where that part of your life is where that will be most apparent and obvious. And on top of that, it is retrograde, meaning it's going to be unstable. It's going to be an unstable type of energy coming through from Mercury into that area of your life. Could cause some indecisiveness in that area of your life, possibly. Next, let's go to Venus. Venus and Scorpio in the 8th house. So Venus, beauty and romance. Beauty and romance in a emotional and intuitive, resistant to change type of energy. In the 8th house of death and transformation in that area of your life. Now, when I say death, that doesn't necessarily mean a physical death. That could mean the death of the old self and the start of a new self. Next is Mars in Leo. And Mars, action and change, or action and courage. Mars, action and courage. the action and courage is going to be enthusiastic and spontaneous, but resistant to change. And it's going to be in the 5th house of fun and pleasure that you experience individually. Or basically in that area of your life is where that's going to be the most apparent. Next, we have Jupiter in Capricorn, 10th house. So abundance and good fortune, an expansive type of energy. That is in a practical and realistic, also initiative and enthusiastic way. And it's in the house of career and public life. So one thing that could mean is maybe that your career is perhaps could be, well, to keep it simple, let's just say that could be really good as far as a career goes. A career that involves something practical and realistic because of the Capricorn. Again, that's just a possibility because the whole chart has to be taken into account. Next, we have Saturn. Saturn retrograde in the 7th house and Libra. So Saturn, mastery and limitation with a restrictive nature. So, mastery and limitation in a communicative and intellectual way. With initiative and enthusiasm in the 7th house of partnerships and the way you interact with others. And because of the retrograde, it could be unstable. It may not work as well as if it was not retrograde. Could cause some indecisiveness with Saturn, the mastery and the limitation, involving others. Next, we have Uranus in the 11th house and Aquarius. So, Uranus, sudden changes and revolutionary ideas. That are communicative and intellectual, but resistant to change. In the area of life of friends and how you have fun in a group. Next, we have Neptune in the 6th house. And Neptune is mystical and dreamy. Only it's going to be in a practical and realistic sense, and it's going to be adaptable and flexible. And it's going to be most prominent in the house of self-improvement, in that area of the person's life. Next, Pluto in Pisces, 12th house. Pluto is transformative and occultic, and it is in immutable water, so emotional and intuitive, adaptable and flexible. And the 12th house, confusion and confinement. Now, really, you don't really want planets in the 12th house if you can help it. But that can't always be avoided, so that's how Pluto would be in mutable water and 12th house. So now let's go over the north and south nodes. South node, and the nodes are, in simple terms, they will always be retrograde. And we have the south node in Capricorn. So the comfort zone, or the area where we need to get our energy from, will be right here in Capricorn, that earthly energy, that cardinal earthly energy. And we need to get it into the north node. But now this south node is also in the 10th house. And that is the house of the career and public life. So that means get your energy out of there, into the north node, into the 4th house, which is the home life. So one way you might look at that is get your energy out of the earth into the water, or out of the public life into the home life. Take care, concentrate. You need to concentrate more on matters of the home and the family rather than the career and public life. Get out of the earth, Capricorn, and into the water, Cancer. That's one possible interpretation. Again, the whole chart must be taken into account. Now, let's go over a few examples of what happens if the signs in the houses are not in line, which can happen. Most of the time, they will not be in line. Aries in the 1st house will not be in line, for example. Pisces in the 12th house will not be in line. So, let's say the sun is in the 2nd house, and let's say Taurus is somewhere else, and Virgo is right here. Let's say the sun is in Virgo in the 2nd house. Then you get the ego, core self, and general characteristics will be in a mutable earth, practical and realistic, adaptable and flexible. But it'll also be in the house of money and what the person values. Moon. Let's say Sagittarius ain't there. Let's say it's Pisces, but yet let's say it's Pisces. Yet the 9th house. So the moon, emotions, intuition, inner self, and that being in a mutable. Well, no. In a Sagittarius ain't there, so it's going to be in a mutable water. So the emotions, intuition, inner self, and will be emotional and intuitive and adaptable and flexible. taking place in the area of life primarily of the ninth house, or higher learning and long distance travels. Let's look at Mars. Now you'll notice it's, if pretend Leo's not there, we have Sagittarius and Capricorn and the fifth house. Mars, you'll notice, is close to the cusp. So Mars with action and courage, and it's still in Sagittarius but close to Capricorn, so action and courage in Sagittarius, or mutable fire. So action and courage and enthusiasm, with enthusiasm and spontaneousness in a adaptable and flexible way. But also, not just the enthusiasm and spontaneous and adaptable and flexible, not just that, but also it's going to have a little bit of the Capricorn cardinal earth energy mixed in with it. It's still going to be Sagittarius mostly, or more dominantly, but still it's going to have some of that Capricorn energy mixed in with it. And it's going to be in the fifth house of fun and pleasure in an individual way, in that area of life. So they're going to have a lot of drive in that area of their life, a lot of action, courage, energy in that area of their life, with a mixture of Sagittarius and Capricorn energies. Because of the cusp placement. Okay. One thing I want to mention again is the descriptions I use are very, very basic, just enough to basically show you how all this works. And so I'm purposely keeping it very simple, very basic. And it's real easy to, as I've said before, probably a page or two for each sign, for each planet, for each house. So I'm simply trying to keep it simple. And that's it for part 4. Next is part 5.